I've lived 1,000 lives. I've piloted 1,000 souls. I've killed and fought at night just for another role.
This is the Happy Jacks RPG podcast, a roundtable discussion that's a mix of friendship, humor, unbridled enthusiasm, and tabletop RPG topics sent in from around the world.
Just for another role.
How the show goes. Hello, and welcome to the Happy Jacks RPG podcast, season 34, episode 5. My name is Kimmy.
I'm Jay.
And I'm Graham.
Welcome. You're a new person. How exciting. We'll find out
I
all
am
about
new.
you. Yes. In today's episode, we're gonna talk to Graham in just a moment about their amazing designing. Alex from the Midwest has an accessibility war happening at their friendly local gaming store. And from the archive 2015, Kirby from Winnipeg deals with players that are too focused on the small details in a game without mechanics that support those small details. So if you'd like to contribute a question or story to the show, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. Or you can post in the mailbag channel in the Discord. And you can get to the Discord at happyjacks.org/Discord. Announcements. Starscape is kickstarting right now. Do not perceive me.
Woohoo!
Turn around. Don't look. Go to goldenlassogames.com/Kickstarter to do the thing. Just do the thing, please. Gen Con is coming up. I'm going to be there, and some of the other Happy Jacks people will be there. At me, if you're going to be there and want to do a meetup or something, I feel like there's going to be a lot of us there. Lloyd is going to be there from all the way from the UK, so that's very exciting. So there's just it's exciting. I've never been to Gen Con, so I'm a little excited and overwhelmed.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, I hope so too. It'll be wild. I'm actually rooming with a bunch of board game players
Nice.
who don't know anything about TTRPGs, so that's going to be super exciting. They're like,
Wow.
that's nice. Their schedules are going to be totally opposite. So
That's amazing. I really would have thought board games and TTRPGs, there would be a lot more overlap than people who really don't know anything about
yeah,
it.
they really don't know anything
Weird,
about
so
it.
weird.
They're completely different worlds. You go to
Yeah.
a place like a game testing, like a play testing convention. The board game people go to bed, and the RPG people hang out at the bar and chat with people.
Yeah.
It's so separate.
Yeah, it's wild. So anyway, it'll be great. But they're such great people. They're like my besties from, I don't know, you have brothers from other mothers. I've got I don't know, buddies from other categories. I don't know. I can't think of a rhyme right now. I'm sorry, I failed. But anyway, I love them. All right, Indie Designer of the Month. Our July Indie Designer of the Month is Graham Gentz, who is right here. Welcome. You can find his games at grahamgentz.itch.io. That's GRAHAMGENTZ. And you can also go to linktree/Graham Gentz, spelled the same way. This week we're discussing a game I love very much. It's called Under the Autumn Strangely. So, the years have passed and vanished in the mud. Still, we shall find you still. Let me try again. I'm going to start again because this is beautiful.
All right, it's okay. Nobody's watching.
It's
from
fine.
the top.
It's fine.
We'll fix it in post.
No, we won't. It's fine. So, the years have passed and vanished in the mud. We shall find you still. And all that was is lost by the yellowed noon. To once was and never will. You, ours, and we can be a dream to bring us under the autumn strangely. Under the Autumn Strangely is a storytelling game of pastoral horror priming with anachronistic Americana set in a land that never was. Inspired by Over the Garden Wall. You've heard me talk about Over the Garden Wall before, and if you haven't been listening to the podcast long enough. And it was created by Patrick McHale, and players collaboratively create a world uncanny and odd. Codify and encourage tonal clash as the three roles meld, I can talk, it's fine, in whimsy, autumnal melancholy, and dread. Take a wrong turn on a dusty road, follow the sign past the red barn with peeling paint, doubt your senses, and get a little lost. Welcome to the Never Was. And you can get it for $10 at grahamgentz.itch.io, or You can actually get the 40-page physical copy. It's a beautiful color for $20 on Indie Press Revolution. So, and Indie Press Revolution is amazing.
Which is nearly sold out.
There's 5 copies
Hey.
left.
Fingers crossed that the physical copies come in for Gen Con. I will also be at Gen Con. We can hang out. We can do things. We can play some games and ask board gamers what they're doing. Lean over their shoulders and stuff.
Yeah. Wait. You have pieces, huh? Do we have a spinner? Okay, so
That's a lot of cubes. What are you
There's a
doing with all
lot.
those cubes?
I know. Wait. That's the entire instruction booklet? Like all 10 pages of those? That's the entire book?
If that, 10 pages. This leaflet is the instruction.
Yeah, that's it. Right. So I am a huge fan of Over the Garden Wall. It's a fantastic animated masterpiece. It's always streaming, especially around like the autumn time, around Thanksgiving in the US. It is for kids, but not for kids. It's this strange mixture of whimsy and, like you were describing, for Under the Autumn Strangely, and horror, and it's just this magnificent tone that's just enough to keep you a little uncomfortable, but also fascinated and like very like attached to the characters. The best, like honestly, like Samantha's characters in our APs is a very good kind of like parallel, like a little odd, very endearing. You love them so much, and then they do weird things that make you uncomfortable, but you still love them and you really want the best for all of them. Like that's kind of the tone it captures. And Under the Autumn Strangely does a really great job of capturing that vibe, which is a hard thing to kind of mechanize and codify. So I know. Sorry, Graham, I'm just gonna tell you everyone how great you are.
No, I have to talk about it all the time. So if somebody else has read it and thinks something about it, I'm shocked. So,
and I honestly, it was one of those things before I actually like met you or knew of you. I don't know. I saw the cover somewhere. It might have been in like the IDGN, like Discord or something. I don't remember. But I just remember I was scrolling through something, and then like the cover popped out, and before I even read the title, I was like, oh, that looks like Over the Garden Wall. Like it just like the cover like just had that vibe, and I started looking and I was like, oh, this is amazing. So it's just very, very cool. And I'm not a horror person generally, but this type of horror that has this whimsy and also fucking fabulous music. I'm just gonna say some of the best lyrics in any music ever. Like it just blows my mind as someone who's written music and lyrics from very witty, smart lyrics, because like I write funny songs. Like the songs in Over the Garden Wall just drive me nuts. It makes me feel really inept and I hate it. And
I thought you were talking about the musical component of my
that
game,
too.
which
Yes, it has a musical component too, which also fascinates and terrifies me. There's a couple. As someone who I love performing music, I don't like karaoke. Like I do not do karaoke ever. Like there's like this weird like.
Oh, you don't have to sing. You don't have to sing in my game.
I know, but like, it's just I don't know. There's like. I don't know. There's just like a weirdness for me with that. But no, I think that you were able to capture all the elements of Over the Garden Wall, and there are kind of other things in that genre, but that's the one that's like closest to my heart. So yeah, why don't you talk? Why don't we slide into our next kind of topic, which is talking to you about you, Graham, and your games. So I guess like starting with like I want to talk to you about why you started designing games, but specifically about this game. Like, what was your impetus? What made you want to design this game?
So, a lot of what has led me from the games that I ran and played into becoming a designer, my style as a facilitator into my love for storytelling games and kind of GM-less games. It really was about understanding, no matter how good I am personally at understanding a story or sharing a story, the real power, the alchemy that occurs at a role-playing table is when everyone is so invested and so in it and surprising themselves and surprising me. And that's this real value. And so going all the way to this game specifically, over and over and over again. I kept having conversations with people in parties or other places about Over the Garden Wall over and over again.
It's
People
like a
kept saying,
secret
"This is my
club.
favorite show of all time. This is my favorite show of all time."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "This is really great," because I watched it and loved it, but over 2 or 3 years, it was just people who like it's a must watch. We watch it every single year. It's complete October. And beyond that, I would ask people, okay, well, what did they like about it? Because for me, I am a horror fan, so I think about the creepy elements and how it captures this child horror and other things, right? The like creepy books you read in elementary school that are still so burned into people's heads. But then people would say, oh, I love, Greg, he's so cute. And I'm like, that's true.
Yeah.
It's so many things to so many people, and it manages to create this so that everyone is able to say, like, yes, this is a thing I've always wanted, but never knew like how to ask for. And so it's so complex, like good art, that's what you want. You want everyone to come in and look at a thing and say, this is what I personally draw from it, and walk out, right?
Yeah.
And so I realized that if I wrote my quote unquote Graham's Over the Garden Wall game, it would be one specific thing, but that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to have a game where there's buckets, and I label the buckets, and I say, players fill them up with these things, and then over and over and over again, every time the game is played, people are able to create that tonal clash. Because I think about that too, all the RPGs I've ever played, where players are not on the same page.
Yeah.
Especially in a GM'd game, where the story is subjected upon them. They're these passive vessels, right? It's like grade school. It's the whole thing.
Yeah.
And
Teachers, man. Teachers.
it's pedagogy of the abreast. It's the idea of education in this form, that you're supposed to sit there and be listened to. But you get discover is really, how do you facilitate the cooperation and the additions everyone has? So that's what I did. That's what this game is. I call it a horror game, but it's really only as horrific as what players do and how they define. And the fact that there's 3 roles and the way that they push and pull, interact, there's really nothing in the game where I said, this is the way you have to run it, or this is the tone you have to do. I'm trusting in players. I believe in players to create the game that they want at the table, and the end be like, I had no idea that's what I did. So, Kimmy, you're talking about, Graham, you captured all this stuff. And I'm like, well, actually, I bet on players being able to. And for me, that's is what defines the game and the way I write games.
Yeah. No, and I think that's incredibly smart, because the people who are going to pick up this game, and especially who are going to like just see that cover and glom onto it like I did, are going to want that vibe. They're going to be seeking it out. They're going to be working to incorporate it. So that's a really interesting design choice, to like pull back in a way and just let them do their thing, because that's what they want. So that's fascinating, because I feel like, I know I sometimes feel pressured to mechanize every little thing and make sure so that like hold hands too much. Like you were talking about teachers, like we do that. Like, okay, everybody come this way. Everyone's gonna walk together. Okay, good job. Are we all on the same page? Okay. Everybody turn to the next page. Like, I feel like I sometimes like overhand hold with my design. So it's fascinating that you like consciously were like, nope, not gonna do that. Like, that's very cool, and it works. It absolutely works. It's interesting.
Yeah. It's putting a lot. It's great to put a lot, to like be able to create material, and put enough faith in your audience, to kind of realize that, hey, this is what I need, and they'll get it. They'll get it.
Yeah, and people absolutely have with this game.
Yeah.
People I haven't even like I've seen a lot of commentary on the internet, and people I don't even know who like. It's pretty popular. Graham, good job.
I don't know about that, but I'm excited. I'm excited that people are talking about it at all. There's Babes in the Woods that people put side by side because our inspirations are similar. But what has been done with Babes in the Woods is mechanically way different.
Yeah.
From these are my buckets. Please, players, fill up your buckets. It's not my game for what is so exciting to me, and why I've seen over and over and over again as a facilitator for friends or strangers at cons. It's the point of alchemy, this like instant connection that occurs, and then everyone's walking away hugging and high-fiving. What is that? What is that thing? All of us here, all three of us, have had absolutely, truly inexplicable experiences at a role-playing table. And what is that? Like, what makes that happen? Is it the mechanics? Is it something else? Is it the players? And so there are mechanics that I am trying to do a particular kind of thing, but for me, it's the players pushing in and this momentum being created, and the mechanics are the spokes of the wheel. And so they're keeping it together, but what is actually making the story? Well, the players, it's like kind of a stone soup. You like trick them into realizing that they are the game, even though the mechanics are doing something very particular.
That is one of my
exciting to me.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite metaphors for game design, and I love
Stone
that.
soup?
Yeah,
That's
it's
awesome.
so good.
I've never heard that
Okay,
actually in this
yeah,
context.
do you know the book though?
I do. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So again, like school teacher, like we talk about it. I often start like the school year with it. It's one of my like collection of books.
What grade do you do, Kimmy?
I'm starting kindergarten this year. I'm so excited.
Whoa, okay. Well, then a little hand holding might be there.
There's a lot. Yeah, there's
I've-
gonna be a lot more hand holding this year.
I've run games for as young as 5 all the way to high school and everything in between. People are always scared of middle school, and I really like playing role-playing games with middle schoolers because of the you want to explore, and it's the same level as people complaining like, oh, the players they don't want to go into my dungeon thing, where again you're submitting your story on the players. They're like, they don't want to go fight things, they want to have this lemonade stand. But for me, that is the lemonade stand. Like that is the game. Like if you listen to your players, you would have the best time of your life. And that's what middle schoolers want to do all the time. They're just experimenting, so you get to experiment with them. So kindergarten, little different, it's you just got to play by their rules and have enough things to occur. They can play Starscape. Do a Starscape. Do a kindergarten version for
These
Starscape.
are dice. Don't put them in your mouths. Okay, so
Just do a big one.
Yeah,
Too big to
exactly.
put in the
The big
mouth.
chunky
I do
dice. Yeah.
actually. I have a full set of really nice, like large size LARP dice that were a gift from James, awesome James, who's our mod right now, to my little one. She adores them. It's like they're one of her favorite toys.
That's really sweet.
But yeah, I might steal one or two of those for the classroom. But yeah, it's I agree with you about middle schoolers. They're especially for gaming. Teaching is a little different, but like for gaming, they do. Yeah. But for gaming specifically, they have it's like they haven't quite been completely conformed by society yet. They're in this interesting place between childhood when they still want to use their imagination.
Yeah,
they
they're
still
not
want to
so
play.
grounded in reality, right? Yeah,
And like they're just
I get
starting
that
to
too.
learn those like societal norms that are going to kind of box them in as an adult, as sad as that sounds. Like they're just learning those and they haven't gotten old enough to unlearn those. I feel like everyone has that. They're like they start off very free, they learn society's norms, become like in the box, and then as we get a little older, we like, this box sucks. Let's get me out of this box, and we get like more to be ourselves again. But they're in a very unique place where they are able to glom onto like very complicated concepts and political things and challenges and societal like injustice in a game, but also have like really interesting like childlike imaginary imaginative solutions.
Yeah, different outlooks on these topics, right? Like they'll still take your game in a direction you completely did not expect. Yeah, which is awesome.
So good.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Graham, like what got you into game design to start with?
I mean, from the moment I was running games for my friends in middle school, I was doing, what is now called hacks, so like writing stuff, but I never really considered design. Nobody does. And that's why the culture of hacks is so vital. People are like, oh, I have my homebrew, which is a thing that like, I like that hacks is now, it's a PBTA hack. This sounds like game design.
Yeah.
10 years ago, 15 years ago, the idea of a hack was a derogatory term. You would say that when you're like, oh, it's not real game design, it's a hack. But luckily, thanks to PBTA, people are like, yes, these are real games. And so the idea was that there were, I didn't really ever want to go to conventions because I would look at these things that looked like basically capitalism overwrought. It's just like conspicuous consumption, and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, this is not a thing for me. But when I finally made it to Gen Con, as a younger person, I realized that the first day was getting stuck in the main floor and being like, this is overwhelming, this is insane. And then the second day, I found IPR, and then the third day, I found Indie Games on Demand. And so the breakthrough was, oh man, there's a community here. There are people who are playing and caring about these games. But for me, for the 15 years previous, like I was the evangelizer. I was the person that would say, "Hey, come here. I have this interesting thing I want to show with you. Humor me for one session, and we're going to play this. I'm going to teach you Fiasco, or we're going to, do all this other stuff, or we're going to play some Vampire the Masquerade, which a lot of my college and high school was Call of Cthulhu and Vampire. But I left D20 as quickly as I could, and then was exploring all these different things. So that's a big part of the design, was the fact that, there's a stereotype that people stick with one game. And for me, I was really curious, and I didn't know why. I was like, well, why is this working the way it does? Why does Spirit of the Century work the way this does? And so it really keyed in when I was like, oh man, these games are made by real people. That first Gen Con at Indie Games on Demand, somebody was like, hey, there's Jason Morningstar over in the corner. And I went up to him and I said, Jason, hi, I'm Graham. The experiences I've had playing your games, I couldn't replace them for anything. And he's like, oh man, you're going to make me cry. And we talked for like 10 minutes about the games we'd played, and then that was it.
Yeah.
And so I realized that these were expressions, that people were expressing themselves. And so I ended up at places like Metatopia in Morristown, New Jersey, which is this con run by Double Exposure, which is game design and playtesting, and absolutely incredible environment, a beautiful energy, like not like a con, more like summer camp. People are testing and playing things and asking questions, and you're just over and over and over again, just like overwhelmed with this beautiful sea of creativity and people sharing, asking questions, and building things. And so that's really what it comes down to, is that I, in other parts of my life, either in childcare or in like nerdy spaces, I believe very strongly in cultural equity and community equity, and then being able to create the micro community that is a role-playing table. And then what did it mean when I wasn't just sharing it with those 6 people? I could share one game in one session with these 6 people, or all of a sudden there's these other environments, these casual conversations, or these experiences that other people get to have, picking up a thing and doing it with their group. People I've never GM'd before, or I've never tried a GM-less game, and then realizing what they can do. Like that's the thing that has really stuck with me.
Yeah, that's the magic right there. It's interesting. I feel like this has been coming up a lot lately. So I started, as I was talking about, singing like a folk musician before I was into game design and stuff. Singing like actual, like I performed at the Renaissance Fair, and I sang a lot of like actual period music from the time, and then also wrote like funny versions that sounded like they were from the time period, like all these things. So like folk music is something that's very niche, like, and things like that. And there's so many parallels, like game design is actually like absolutely a folk art, and it's kind of coming into its own, and it's kind of becoming a thing where like I mean, there are, like D&D or whatever, that's not necessarily folk art necessarily, but there are aspects of it.
I'd argue it is. We can talk about that all you want.
Yeah. But especially with indie designers who are not designing games like for consumption necessarily, that are designing games as a statement, or as an homage to something they love or something. I think there's a little bit of a different artistic quality specifically to that. Then, I mean, it's still art. Like if you go and buy a Thomas Kincaid painting at the mall, it is still absolutely art. The intent of the painting is different than someone who's like painting in their garage and stuff, especially because I think Thomas Kincaid's dead, and I think they're just mass producing his stuff now. But so the intent is a little bit different. But I feel, I don't know, it's just like been on my mind a lot lately how this is a folk art, how they can be so different, and I don't know, it's kind of beautiful and magical, and it's I feel like we're in a really cool time right now for game design, like tabletop game design in general, but especially as thanks to indie press and slowly but surely, and also because a lot more actual plays have put these smaller games out in front of audiences, and people are starting to become more aware of all of them. I don't know, I just kind of rambled there for a minute.
No, I mean, really, it's a different kind of literature, right? Because like reading a well put together game and a game that really evokes a feeling is kind of like it's a journey on its own.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
And
about
more of
that
them
too.
and more of them are written with that intent.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's meant to be read as an experience. So even if you don't ever get to play it, which so many of us have
Yeah,
many at this point.
Exactly, right?
Like you have like this beautiful feast for your eyes, or this like literary voice that you're like enjoying. It's not just like an instruction manual, which I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of older games kind of came from that point of view, where it was like, this is how you play the game. And it was still an artistic and an like I loved Traveler, for example, and I've talked about that on the podcast recently, how that's a very specific message and experience, but it's not written with a voice. Like so many of them are Sam, who was on the podcast recently, who does the Dice Exploder podcast. We were talking. He wrote a game called Space Fam, which is very similar to.
Huh.
Yeah, it's funny. Like
it sounds like a
Starscape.
something booming on BackerKit as we speak.
Yeah, right.
Yes. Yeah, Kickstarter, not Backer. But yeah. It's funny because we like met and then we started talking and we were like, oh wow, we designed the same game in two completely different, like not even knowing each other.
Yeah.
And inspired by the same exact things and stuff. So it was very interesting. But reading through his document that he shared, he wrote it from the point of view of the ship. So it's like a very cool voice for the game book itself. It's very entertaining and interesting to read because it's like this very unique perspective that still tells you all the rules and how to play. But it's like, I don't know, there's artistic choices in there like that I just love. We're seeing more and more of things like that.
Yeah.
Well, the idea of folk art, I think, is something that I have talked about. You had my dear friend Ryan Kahn on your show.
Yeah.
And something Ryan and I talk a lot about is the idea of a folk game. So you talk about folk games are things that are like only taught, right? They're not written down, and there's this sort of oral tradition sort of element to it. You know, like Red Rover. Like, how do you know the game, the rules to Red Rover? It's because some at some point somebody taught it to you. And I feel like so much of RP culture is largely a folk game, especially when it comes to something like Munge and Maggins and the way that AP culture has like slowly morphed into it. If there's a new game, how do you learn how to play it? And there's all these unwritten rules. Okay, how do you infer something within the fiction? How do you add to it? At what point are you supposed to add a question? What is the hierarchy? How do you define it as GM or player? So some games started to articulate that more specifically, like PPTA, and then many of the other GM-less games, of which are great inspirations to me, because so much of the philosophy of what the game is and what it's trying to do are embedded in the rules. Whereas, like you're talking about these old style of writing, the idea was that, okay, you pick up Traveler, like I adore Traveler, or Gamma World or something, or even the idea of what like OSR and NSR have kind of become. So much of that is, we know it's a folk game. So what is this whisper of the rule we can have? You know, how are you playing Knave when the rules aren't there, but then there's all this kind of unwritten stuff? So at what point is it a folk game? At one point are you doing it? Because then that for me defines what you're writing in the game, or like what you risk by throwing at people. Like that whole thing I think is endlessly fascinating.
Yeah. Well, and especially like with folk music specifically, you have these tunes that have been passed around the world in different time periods, and like you'll hear the same musical tune in like Ireland and then Australia, and in Australia it has totally different words because it slowly, as people migrated or whatever, they didn't know the words, so they made up their own words and taught that to their kids or whatever. So you've got these, and you also have folk songs that have the same lyrics but different melodies, because people could remember the words but they didn't remember the song, so they made up their own melody. So you've got this interesting, you can trace back these lines of this music, almost like family trees or like maps. And you can do that with game design too. Like especially like PBTA is a really easy example. You've got like Powered by the Apocalypse, and then you have all these offshoots, and then they branch into like Forged in the Dark, and they branch into Belonging Outside Belonging, and so there are all these takes on these similar themes and lyrics and things like that that have this similar foundation or similar root system, going back to like the tree metaphor. So it's fascinating to watch these through lines and how they develop. Yeah, I don't know. It's something I love to think about and look at and find those threads.
Well, there is the literary squid. I don't know if you've ever seen this image. I saw it like 15 or 20 years ago. It's like all literature ever written. It looks like this big purple squid, and it shows all the things being affected. It's like mythology and fear at one end, and it gets muddled in the middle, and it goes out to other things. I think that's very cool to me. But what interests me about the idea of folk games and RP is not just design and how it affects other things, because that's really interesting. It's the unwritten stuff. It's the stuff that you've assumed or you've learned. Everybody started playing at some point, and then gathered these habits, and there is a quote unquote, how do you play? And some of that, is heavily influenced by now massively popular APs, like Critical Role and something, right? And so people are either like, have transformed this. For me, I love RP because it obliterates the line between audience and participant. I am taking part in this thing, but I'm also listening to a facilitator or the other players, right? Your audience and participant. It's not like a movie or a play or something. You're part of it, but you're still watching it unfold. And now AP have created all of this huge amounts of unwritten things, these things that are being changed. How do you play? Do you play it right? Do you play it wrong? Or like, what are the little micro things that people aren't even aware of? Like, I think this is as deep as it goes, and I think really fascinating.
Yeah, I've been working on like the GM section for Starscape, and it's wild. Like the first version I had, I was like, oh, hey, this is great. Okay. And then like someone was reading it through it, like this was a while ago now, and they were just like, what if someone's never played another RPG before? And I was just like, I guess I have to put more directions in there. Because like it was like one of those things where you just kind of like assumed, like, okay, you roll the dice. And then, I don't know, it was just very interesting to suddenly realize, okay, like this could be a point of entry for someone to enter this folk art, as it were. So it's like you have to kind of balance it. Like, which things do you include? Which like facilitator norms are important to you in your game? Which things do you leave out and hope they can figure out for themselves? Which things, it's a very interesting, and I've started reading a bunch of different GM sections in a lot of different games, and it's really fascinating, like talking about like games in general, the writing of them, the microcosm of GM sections, and like how to tell someone how to run your game or whatever it is, or not run your game if it's a belonging outside belonging game or whatever. The facilitation piece is even a subsection that's very fascinating to look at, because it really tells you a lot about what the GM wants people to experience in their game when they're explaining to someone how they want them to run it.
Right.
So it's really interesting. All right. So, Graham, we've talked about a couple of your games. So this is our third week talking about you. So this is the third game of yours that we've talked about. So I hate to have you like, I don't know, which game are you most proud of?
I mean, the one that I've talked about the most is Under the Autumn Strangely, because it's an IPR and I have a physical book. And when I go to conventions and I run sessions, that's what I talk about. Other projects that I have are expressions of like single ideas, and the other projects that I have going forward. So, last week, what was it you talked about? Immortal Lich, Henry Kissinger.
Yeah, that was the last
which
one.
I was shocked to discover is an indie darling. I don't know if that's true, but there's certain ideas that I'm playing with, or like Ooze Your Daddy is like a play on other certain things, right?
Yeah.
And I have.
It's such a good title. I love it so much.
The other games that I have that are expressions of these like larger themes are anytime you write something, you're trying to express something that otherwise you're trying to get out there, or you're molding these ideas together, or there's just something you can't leave alone, or you have a great pun name and you're trying to get rid of it, right?
Yeah.
You're like, here it is, I need to get this out there. you know. So it comes from many different places, and how does it end up? And I believe very firmly in death of the author, especially when it comes to something so interactive like a role-playing game. Once it exists in this form, you're asking players to take it into themselves and create these things and make it theirs. It's important to me that these designs have ownership within the act of play, the act of using the thing. We all, as indie fans, have giant bookshelves full of games we've never played, which I'm okay with because I'm interested in ideas, and the idea of people going out and saying, I have this thing, I'm going to go to Kickstarter, I have a weird idea. Absolutely, that is worth money to me. It's the equivalent of like buying somebody's burn seat out of the back of their car after a show, you know? And I love that. And my $10 is way more valuable to somebody else dealing with imposter syndrome and whatever, especially if then I get to say, you know, you're a real designer. So that for me, again, it comes back to this cultural equity and this community equity.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you find most challenging about being a game designer?
The enthusiasm drop off is a heck of a thing. The last 10% is harder than the previous 90. That's why so many people, creative people, have projects they pick up and drop, or you know, a whole drawer full of things that they're afraid to go into, right? Because you have an initial idea and maybe like a burst of creativity and then writing, and then any number of things could happen. Little voices could come in and say, no, it's bad, it's a bad idea, or you as general are not worth it, right? And even if you get over that hump and the momentum rides, then you have to get up to all these other points. And that's where I've reached at my point as a designer is, okay, where's my community of support and how am I going to get these games done, and being autodidactic enough to be like, okay, and I'm going to learn layout and all these other things in graphic design, and making sure that when you collaborate with people, like you talked about my cover, my very talented cover artist Chenza Della Donna, like, is paid for their work and making sure that occurs as well. You know, all of this being part of this greater thing. That last 10% is so hard, especially when you're working on a text. There's like working on the text, it's like the little details and the, oh no, there's one error on page 34 and I feel like it ruins the entire thing, or whatever. Yeah. There's all of these little micro steps, and then once you think you're done, there's 3 more steps that aren't done. Or dealing with a printer, I got to do that for the first time, and it was like one thing was something I had done wrong, and then there was another delay, and there's something that they had done wrong, and the whole thing is like nerve-wracking. And so it's getting it done completely. If I'm going to say one thing to answer you,
yes,
and to kind of also shift into this, because this is more important to me, is if somebody else is listening and they're like, I want to design a game or I want to write a game, you got to finish. You got to get it all the way to the end, and you got to get it out there and say, I'm done, and get the PDF or get it printed on a zine. And even if the quality isn't what you wanted, that doesn't matter. It's the idea that I love homebrew campaigns, but not the term, because what you're doing is game design. And I want people to be legitimized. I want people to be seen for the stuff they're doing and be praised for it. So if you got a thing, you got to finish it, no matter what. Even if you're like, oh, I can never look at it. That last little bit for me means that I feel like personally I've ruined it, but then it's out in the world, and that catharsis is the most difficult thing to achieve. But you got to do it. It's no matter how hard it is, because then it's done, and then you have lessened your drawer. Your drawer of unfinished projects is just this much shorter.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly valuable.
Yeah. Stormbender in the chat was saying earlier the OGL debacle helped out the little games quite a bit, in their opinion. And I kind of agree. And it's interesting. I kind of wonder, I've never thought about this before, but like listening to you talk about how like homebrew is a way of minimizing what is absolutely game and world building. And I sort of wonder if, like, I mean, this might be like a conspiracy theory. Maybe I need like a tinfoil hat, but I wonder if that's like was sort of like the intent, because at the like when the term homebrew kind of started, like mostly D&D, there were a couple big publishers, like they were big publishers. They weren't, you know, and I wonder if that was sort of a way of normalizing people putting a lot of work into customizing their game, but keeping it like an amateur thing so it didn't create competition. Like, I don't know, it seems like capitalism's evil, and it might be like a design, like a feature, not a bug of the term, but maybe not. I don't know. Maybe I'm putting again, tinfoil hat, maybe. But I think you're absolutely right on that. Like, I know so many people who have created just these absolutely, and I'm not spoilers to anyone who's new. I'm not a huge D&D player. I play it like once every 4 years for like 5 sessions, and I'm like, and I'm done with this. But like, I wonder, like people have created such incredible content for so many years, and people are out there making full companies that are creating third-party content for this stuff now. But yeah, it is absolutely game design. It needs to be recognized as such. It's not spinning off of, it's not just building stuff on top of other game design. You still have to build things in a way that fit the math, that balance out, that are cohesive within the world and the setting you're creating. There's so much to it. It's absolutely not lesser than, other game design in any way. So yeah, it's a long way of saying, yeah, you're right. I agree with you.
Great.
I'm glad we did that. That was good. Yeah. I'm very verbose in circles tonight. Sorry, friends. I think I blame the bee sting on my foot. Like, I don't know why.
Oh, sure. There you go.
I stepped on a bee at the beach today while I was playing with my kid, and I'm very pouty about
The
it.
most shocking thing that happened today.
The most shocking thing that happened
Oh, Lord.
on July 21st.
What do you think, chat? F's in chat for Kimmy's foot.
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing else important happened on Sunday, July 21st, 2024.
Easy going day.
in the
Nothing to
United
think
States of
about.
America.
Nothing to. Yeah.
Anyway,
Oh.
let's go ahead and
Easy
move on.
breezy. Like
Oh,
Jake.
oh boy.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We have 2 emails. One of you gets to read one of them out loud, and the other one gets to read the other one. We can actually split up the second one. It's a little long, but who'd like to go first?
I can take this one.
Okay.
All right. Hey, Jackers. Longtime watcher. Yes, I watch on YouTube instead of listening to podcasts. I have a problem with a group that is trying to get organized in my local FLGS/gaming cafe. Oh, awesome that it's a gaming cafe. There aren't enough of those in this world, I
There's
think.
not.
There sure aren't. Yeah.
I feel like they're trying to pop up more, and I feel like it's
Yeah.
like gaming stores that are
You're
like,
growing.
yeah, we
Yeah,
also have
they
food
are.
now. Like, they add the food element.
I
Yeah.
helped run a couple different board game libraries before I moved to the East Coast. And again, it's part of my, I like sharing experiences. Like, it's all
Yeah.
part of the same thing for me.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Also, just food while you're playing is great.
I know, right? Yeah, it's the place where you
It's
can
the
eat
thing
and
It's the
drink
thing I miss
and-
most
yeah.
about doing APs. Is like the ability to just munch on stuff because no one likes that. No one wants to listen or watch an AP where people are chewing food.
Yeah.
But
no, that's
I
true.
miss the
It's
snacks.
ASMR. You can find an
Oh.
audience. You're in LA.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's an audience for that, but the Misophonia crowd I think is even bigger.
Crossover.
That's the
Build
next
your
Happy Jacks
audience.
project is the the food ASM.
The AMSO.
Rolling dice and eating Cheetos into the mic.
Right, there you go.
AMSRPG, yeah.
Yeah.
You can just say, it's called ASMR. I think
ASMR,
we should
right,
all,
yeah,
should all
yeah.
refer to it as ASMR.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Where it's all like
I'd
flapping
always
of wings and
thought-
stuff. And, yeah.
It's all, it's
Right,
fine.
right.
I'm not 12 and
Celestial
ass.
spirit.
He said ass.
Yeah. Okay, so at this FLGS/gaming cafe, awesome. There is a longtime GM there who is a little old school. We call him Bob. That's not his real name. It is important to note that Bob isn't an employee at the store. He is a volunteer who runs games a lot in exchange for no table fees when he wants to play. He does a great job running games, mostly D&D, and is actually very welcoming. He kind of has grognard vibes. I've heard you use that word. Did I use it right? Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah.
But I've seen
Almost certainly.
him... Right? You know it when you're using
I see
it,
the
yeah.
writing on the wall. I see where
Yeah.
this is going, but I think absolutely.
Let's see. But I've seen him run games for just about every type of person imaginable, even groups of kids and teens. He does a great job keeping everyone comfortable and even uses safety tools, which was a new thing for our gaming community. Maybe he's a listener to your podcast. Be cool. And if he's not, tell him about the
Should be,
podcast.
yeah.
Anyway, he generally has great reviews on the game night board. Hold on. He generally has great reviews on the game night board the store runs. Cue the problem.
Is it like maybe not like an online like? thing or
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm thinking of like a community board with list
I
of
see the big
GMs and
board.
stuff. Yeah.
Board.
There's no fighting in here. This is the war room. The war gaming room. Anyways, sorry.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
All right. Let's see. Where am I? Cue the problem. Bob is kind of old school with his table rules. He wants everyone to use paper/pencil character sheets, and no electronics are allowed unless it's an emergency. A lot of us find this a little annoying, but it makes sure that everyone stays on task, and we enjoy his games enough that we put up with it. Until now. A new person has started joining in the games at the store and joined a campaign that Bob is running. He says he has to use a tablet for rolling dice and for keeping his character sheet due to a disability, but he won't tell us what it is. To be fair, we haven't asked either, but Bob does not want to change the rule for him. Bob even printed out some character sheets designed for players with vision problems, but the new person refuses to try them. He complained to the store about Bob not making his games accessible. The store is just a little mom-and-pop shop, and they are now worried about a lawsuit. They've asked Bob to change his long-standing rule or find another place to run the campaign. Where do you all stand on this? It seems like not that big a deal to me, but Bob is pissed that he is being told how to run his games. I worry this will ruin our small but mighty small town gaming community. Who is right, Bob or the new person? Drink!
Woohoo!
And wave at the camera because I can see you.
Hello.
Hello. Not creepy, though. Alex
It
in
can
the
be creepy.
Midwest.
Those are good.
Yeah.
Uh, oh, so yeah, there's a lot of sides in this. I feel for the mom and pop shop. Like that's got to be stressful for them.
Yeah.
I just off the like I don't know. I am not a lawyer. Like the Reddit, I'm not a lawyer. But I think if like generally if they're paying to rent the table, I don't think the store can actually be sued for the accessibility as long as like the space is actually accessible and like the store that they, but I don't know for sure. But I feel like if it's a transaction where they are renting this table space to a person, that they are not necessarily liable for making sure that the game is accessible as long as people can get to the table and use the restrooms and all those ADA things are compliant. But I don't know. I guess I'm not a lawyer, but just right off the top, I don't necessarily think that I can't tell from the email. Does it sound like the person's threatening to sue, or do you think that the mom and pop shop is just like worried about it?
I think it sounds like they're just worried about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Because I feel like that would change my opinion a little bit if the person was suddenly like, I'm going to sue this little mom and pop store because this one guy is being a little bit of a dick. But I don't know. Yeah, what do you both of you think? I feel I have strong opinions on this, but I feel like I've talked a lot. So Jay, what do you think?
Yeah, I want Jay. I want to hear what Jay has to say.
Yeah,
Well,
especially
no, I mean,
'cause
I've run.
I feel like you DM more than anyone else in the group.
Yeah,
so.
I've run games in a lot of different public settings. I mean, I've run games in store. I've run games at other people's homes, having been invited there for
At
one
movie theaters,
person or another. What was that?
movie theaters,
And movie. Sure. Yeah. And for me, if you're running a game in public and it is open to the public, especially if you're running at a store, I feel like you have to be open to the way other people play. You can't be precious about how you run games. If you want to do that, if you really want to have that control, then run at a table with your friends and stuff, or close your table at the store. Run a closed table at the store if the store will allow that or provide for that. But if you're kind of running on behalf of the store and it's something that the public space, to be not just the store, because conventions do this and public libraries do this, if it's a way that the venue is reaching out to people and getting them to join games and learn how to play games and build an interest in games, you have to be open to how other people play. And like as far as disability goes, that's not on you to question somebody's capabilities.
Yeah.
If they
100%.
say if they say they need an accommodation, they don't need to necessarily prove that to you.
Yeah.
I don't personally, for me.
No, that's gross as insane. If somebody
Yeah.
says I have a disability, you don't say
and
prove it.
Yeah.
That's insane.
What is it? Please give me your medical history.
Yeah,
like,
you know what?
specifically.
I
So-
don't believe
Get a
you.
doctor's slip for the next time you play my table. Thanks, love you.
So
No,
wild.
that's And so I can understand. I do believe me. I run games for a lot of kids, and we had we had the same policy at our tables: no electronics, paper and pencil. But if somebody really needs it, I'd certainly be open to it. I'd say, well, yeah, of course we'll make an accommodation for you, or it's not even accommodation. You need to play the way you need to play, and that's great.
Right.
Um, uh, and it's not to say that that might change sometime in the future, you know what I mean? Whether one way or another, maybe this person will start feeling confident in their ability to play using pen and paper, or you'll start realizing what the benefits for playing electronically are, you know?
Mhm.
So, I gotta say, I gotta side with the player on this one.
Yeah, like it just is wild to me. Like it just like as an adult, and okay, I will admit my hypocrisy. Like I have been the teacher who's like, put your devices away. No, you're not supposed
Sure.
to have a smart. Well, yeah, But I feel like that's a little different. And if kids, I mean, I also have students who absolutely have specific, electronics that we provide for them as accommodations for their needs. So there's, and it's not my place. If a parent's like, hey, can they use this? Absolutely is always the answer.
Yeah.
Like if I see them like watching YouTube videos on it, then we're going to have a conversation, parents, but that's a different thing. As an adult, I hate shit like this in games.
Mm-hmm.
I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'm an adult. I am a full grown adult person. So don't fucking tell me like what I can and cannot have at your game. Like there should be an open door. Like if my kid is texting me or with the babysitter needs something or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
maybe, it's my ADHD acting up. And yes, I'm going to scroll through some things at the same time. As long as I'm able to jump in the moment and like, people ask me all the time how I can GM and also interact with chat at the same time. It's
Mhm.
because I have ADHD. And I actually focus better on the game when I'm doing other stuff, like if I'm knitting or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
chat and like flipping through the windows of my prep and all these things and reading things actually lets me not start like fading off into what do I need to do tomorrow? I wonder if my kid's asleep.
Mhm.
What color's my hair today? Like all these random things that pop into your head. Squirrel. So even if they are scrolling through other stuff, as long as they're engaging in play and not holding things up,
Yeah,
like
not disruptive. Yeah,
what the fuck?
absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
let
Yeah.
him go. It's annoying. I'm an adult. Don't tell me what to do. It's my job as a teacher to tell kids what to do. Don't tell me what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Graham, what do you think about that?
Yes. Okay. So, am I the asshole? RPG edition. Very excited. With all situations involving human beings, there's plenty to unpack with. But the short answer is that Bob is wrong. What he's doing is wrong, and there's plenty of ways to deal with this in terms of making sure everybody is seen and heard. Because really, it's just complicated empathy. Like Jay, I've run plenty of games for the public and with other people, and there is a certain amount of ambassadorship. What you're doing is you're trying to create the table. Seems like Bob isn't prioritizing that, and there are some complexities which Kimmy has already brought up about like, oh, are they paying for the space? Who is liable? Like all these other things, right? And I think that it comes down to being a decent human being and the idea that like at the table, if someone has a need and they ask for a thing, then exceptions are good because you want people to be able to enjoy it. There is the kind of like other solution, like, oh, they just can walk away, or it's an open door, and like this is important.
Yeah.
Like this is important to have this, and this is part of the complexity of it. It doesn't make Bob any less wrong, and it doesn't make the table in the way that he has done it. I can appreciate the idea of what he's trying to do, but standing his ground and creating this hill to die on is wrong. And the goal is to keep people focused and to have people into the game. Like I see it and I understand what he's doing, but any number of things can be approached, any things can be mediated, and you talk about it, you make everybody heard, and you say, well, think about what this person is, this other person who's experiencing this at your table, Bob. Like they need to play and they want to play and they have these needs. Can you help them? It's really just about that. To bridge off of what Kimmy talked about in terms of the ADHD, in the vein of safety tools and the way I've seen the our indie RPG scene change for the better. We're going to talk about things. We're not going to, oops and ouch moments in terms of like jumping into a thing or being conscious of like the kind of subject matter we're going to create. neurodivergency is like so common in this hobby of ours that so many times people have pulled out crochet or knitting needles, and then they say a thing. They'll say, "Hey, I'm not ignoring you, but I have a need and I need to do it," which literally I can't even, before I can say anything, everyone at the table is like, "Oh yes, please do it." That's me too. And then somebody else pulls out their crochet needles, you know?
Yeah.
I see the environment getting better, and it only gets better with effort being done by everyone at the table. So Bob is wrong, but there's many ways to do it. It's not just like, Bob, you're out of here.
Yeah.
Like, you have to do this thing. Like, he's a dude who's done his thing in a dudeish way for a long time. It's my way or the highway, and he's been allowed to do that for a long time. So again, complexity. Everything is complex.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it black and white, and there's plenty of ways to deal with it as well. But Bob, you got to help your players, man.
Yeah.
What are you doing? What are you doing, man?
Yeah.
Well, and it sounds like Bob has like at least some good intent. Like they're very diverse in their players. They use safety tools, which at the start of this email I would not have necessarily guessed that being a thing. No offense, but when my stereotype of a grognard is not like safety tool inclusive, and that's on me, I guess, for my assumptions. But I do like that. You know, I feel like I would like to assume that Bob has good intent here. I feel like Bob is trying to protect the experience for everyone at the table. Having been the person who vouched for my then boyfriend many, many years ago to play in a D&D game, only to have him bring his laptop and play World of Warcraft while we were at the table.
Boo.
Yeah, that was embarrassing and
Yeah.
very frustrating and awful. It's like, okay, like there's like a level, like I'm good for like, okay, knitting or crochet or just like doodling. Like playing World of Warcraft is a little, there's no, that's like rude. That's just
or
flat
like
out
those
rude.
players that'll like bust out their magic cards and play Magic the Gathering.
I
during
mean,
the
yeah,
game.
I feel like there's a thing, like it's just wild. So I understand vividly the frustration and the embarrassment and the being angry as a GM that like, hey, I'm putting a lot of time into, especially D&D. There's a lot of prep time and stuff for the most part. That
Boo. Prep is death.
Exactly.
No more prep. Prep is death.
I agree, but that you feel like you're not being respected, your game isn't being respected, your other players aren't being respected when someone's behaving like this. So I see the intent of like banning devices. I don't think it's the best way to go, especially in this situation.
Yeah.
I feel like it's better, especially when you're playing with adults, to fucking ban my phone from my thing. Like assume the best, like okay, yeah, and then if someone is like using is taking advantage or is playing World of Warcraft or whatever they're doing, that's like, and they're losing track of turns, they're not able to participate, then you have that conversation with them.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is a you problem. This is not a electronics problem. This is a you're being an asshole problem. Please stop playing World of Warcraft while we're playing our game. Like whatever it is, you know?
Yeah.
Dennis, or whatever your boyfriend's name was. I like how personal it got, Kimmy. It really brings it together.
He has long been referred to as Chad on we are
Oh,
protected.
wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
sure.
That's not his actual name, but that was the name that he was given on the podcast. And we've spoken to him of like this was 15 years ago or so. So we've been talking to him about him for a really long time.
Wow.
Good for him. Good for him to be this famous.
The
Immortalized,
infamy, yeah.
and he has no
He
idea.
made it.
He made it. Good for him. Good Chad. Okay. But yeah, like I feel like there's like intent to protect player experience.
Yeah.
And a little bit of pride, I'm sure. But like this is going about it entirely the wrong way.
Yeah, it just seems like Bob is trying to stem a problem that hasn't happened yet. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think rather than having that mindset, it would behoove them to, think, and maybe this is a growing moment for me, teaching moment or a teachable moment for me. I just need to acknowledge, James V mentioned that Bob is a progressive grognard. So I think we could coin the term prognard.
Yeah.
Hey,
Here on
all
in.
right. Jay, you made it too. You and Chad, you're on your way up.
Prognard. Oh my
Prognard.
God.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Willing to learn.
Yeah.
I know some prognards.
Yeah. Same here. Like, yeah, I mean, if they're able to like pick up safety tools, right, then I don't see why you couldn't pick up another method.
I'm dying. I'm sorry. There's a whole
Human empathy.
backstory that I cannot say online that I
Wow.
will explain.
Is it
And
more
it's-
Chad stories?
Is
Not
this-
about
Chat's
Chad.
going
Is this
crazy. More about Chad.
Happy
Gimme
Jack
more,
After
more.
Dark for the
No.
Patreon
There
subscribers?
you
no.
go. For paid Patreon only, we talk smack about Chad.
Yeah, so I will say that Chad, I think it's been pulled from the internet at this point. I think it's just in like the backlog for Patreons. But my very first episode of the Happy Jacks RPG podcast that I was ever on, like literally
Ooh.
like 13 years ago, Chad was on it with me.
Ooh.
Hey.
It's like a
Mm.
6-person episode. It's a nightmare episode. And I just like, I went back and listened to it like, I think it was like a year ago when I was like organizing it all for the Patreon. And I was just like, oh shit. Like my first ever episode is just like contaminated with this.
Oh.
Not really bad. Like it's fine. He was
Uh.
fine. And it was a rebound relationship anyway. I should have known better. But he was not a good match for me. But he did have a motorcycle, so. All right.
You want a cool
let's
rider.
move-
He did have all
A cool,
epic
cool,
gear.
cool, cool rider.
Epic gear. Yeah, he taught me to ride motorcycles. I had a motorcycle. So it was okay. All right. Email number 2. Let's please move on. From the archive in 2015. All right. Would you like to read this one?
Yeah, from
Okay.
the archive. Ooh,
Yeah.
2015.
And if you get bored,
Hello,
and you
Happy
want to
Jackers.
if you want to tag out at any
What,
point,
what,
Oh, if you want to tag out at any point, just tell us.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello, Happy Jackers. My name is Chad, and I used to date. Wait, this is crazy. I'm max level, and I need to make sure that my first episode was great. Wow, no wonder this is from the archive. I can't believe it makes sense why you pulled this one out, kid.
Amazing.
Makes a lot of sense.
Amazing.
And Graham will never be on the show again. Thanks. Okay.
Greetings from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. I'm a 45-year-old gamer that started with AD&D First Edition as a young teen and played just about everything that TSR put out in the 80s and generally spent most of my time and money on role-playing and tabletop games. In my early 20s, I got involved with a group that did very free-form gaming, some diceless and other things that were strange for the hardcore TSR player. I eventually completely converted to cinematic, low mechanic play styles, and I've been firmly in that camp ever since. My new wife and I moved cities, and I lost track of the group and the hobby. 20 years and 5 kids got in the way, and now I'm only getting back into things. My teens are the most enthusiastic players, and I'm having a great time bringing them into the world of tabletops. I was very happy to hear your podcast, especially that World of Warcraft episode, which was so formative to me
Oh my-
and everything that I ever wanted to do. Gosh, wow, like what a fan. I
I can't
love
believe
the
it's
way.
actually in there. I didn't read the whole
Wow.
thing. I just like cut and paste. Oh, my God.
I love the way all of you seem to run short campaigns to explore an idea or make new systems and see how they influence the game. For every campaign I play, there seems to be 5 more systems I want to try or 5 more ideas to try out. And hearing your campaign ideas and stories helped me live some of that vicariously through you. I'm now a dedicated listener on my many car trips to pick up and drop off teenagers all over Hell's Half Acre. You've kept me sane while I sit in the car waiting for teen girls to have a party. There is no higher praise. My current, wow, this is a long letter. You weren't kidding.
Nope.
My current
I also
D6
you have to think
Star
about
Wars game.
if this was 2015, those kids
It's
are now in
all
their 20s.
important backstory. Like,
Yeah.
this is really going to help us inform the question, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
My current D6 Star Wars game is quite freeform and cinematic. I don't use maps or figures, and I try to let player actions determine the next step of the plot. I usually don't prepare much for a session, other than having a sandbox world that has some good environmental and political detail. My players really enjoy it, and we've been playing for over a year now. They've been having a blast getting involved in all kinds of intricate plots and crazy shenanigans. All right, here's the question. Are you ready, Kimmy? Are you ready, Jay? There's
Oh,
a
yeah.
question.
We're ready.
All right. My players are teen boys, and they love their equipment details. I handwave just about everything, so it really doesn't make any difference at all what make and model of the blaster, as long as it does 4D damage. However, they spend hours making equipment lists and finding equipment on the net and photoshopping pictures of their weapons and making sure they're all very clear about exactly what equipment they have on them at any given time. This is the only area of the game where either they or I go into any sort of detail like this. For most of the rest of the game, we're so rules light they hardly even need their character sheets. I want to recognize what they're doing, because it's obviously important to me, so I want it to matter. How can I throw some acknowledgement that I see for the effort they're putting into their character equipment? What plot ideas can I use to pay back the time they're putting in without it seeming too blatantly obvious? Thanks for getting me excited about gaming up here in the Great White North, where it seems everyone wants to just play 4E. Signed, Max
Amazing.
Supernova Kirby from Winnipeg. If there wasn't anything, then let me know that this is a throwback. It's the, oh no, everyone in Winnipeg is playing 4E. Hello, 2015. It's the future.
We're working on the
All right.
edition after that edition. Welcome.
Right.
I have so many opinions about this.
Go
I can't
first.
go first. So I would
Why?
love to hear
No,
either
you
one
should.
of you.
You should definitely go first. Go.
Okay, so this lovely preamble, he gives his whole history of gaming, where he starts very, he's like, oh, we had all these rules, and then I realized, oh man, prep is death. Good for you, Winnipeg, for understanding prep is death, and then understanding what the artifice is, all this stuff, all these rules and mechanics, all these things being simulated. Is it a simulationist thing, and does it actually give you anything? He's stumbled backwards into this thing, but now the game in question is him and these teens. The kid game. See, we are getting all these themes as we talked about. The teen game. And they're covering their character sheets and weapons and details, and they're out of the game. And all of a sudden, this dad feels like he's not doing enough, and he wants to interact more with them. And so, again, that's kind of a complex feeling. Is he not doing enough and it does not matter? Number one, I see no sense that the kids they're feeling like they're being left out or their things aren't mattering. So I think that he's okay for there. If there was a piece of it, because I mean the word count certainly wasn't lacking. If there was a piece where he was like, oh, and one of my teenage sons complained, but that's not here at all. He's just noticed it because he's a GM who loves his sons and wants the game to be good, and notices they're doing all this stuff. So that's number one. Number two is that all the stuff they're doing, they want to do because it's fun.
Yeah.
They're doing it because they want to do it. No one's asked them to do it. Certainly not the GM. He's not a prognard. This guy from Winnipeg seems to be doing his game the way he wants to do it, and it's all cinematic. It's all caring about what's going on, which is lovely. This is similar to how I have tried to have games. You listen to the players, you can do what they want, and then you give them offers. For me, role-playing is all about making offers and seeing what players do with those things. And so he has any opportunity he wants at any point to look over and have it involved. He can look over and in the descriptions, he can say, and you pull out your blaster of these details, which then he remembers. If it's all narrative and it's all visual and it's all of these sensory details that he wants to care about, it's the easiest thing in the world from 2015. I hope you're still listening, to just fold some of those things in. And he's created a solution for a problem he didn't have. Because it's so detailed, that's a gift for a narrative first DM who doesn't want to do prep, who's focusing on the cinematics, who's focusing on the moment to moment and the pacing and stuff. What the players has done is a massive gift. It is not a burden to you. It's opportunities and choices. And so you can use it and they'll love it. And if you don't use it, it seems like they don't care. It seems like they're having a great time away from the table, which as a former teen myself, I did a lot of this stuff. The idea of prep is death for me is so fundamental, but if prep is fun, if what you're doing is enjoyable, do that, but not because it's required or it's asked of you. And I think that's what the players are doing.
Yeah.
They're doing this stuff because it's fun. And they want.
Yeah, especially if they're photoshopping new weapon designs.
Yeah.
So cool.
So fun.
Ask them more about that.
Yeah.
Be a dad. Be like, oh, that's sick what you're doing, right? It's so easy.
Yeah. No, he says my current D6 Star Wars game. I'm assuming that's West End Games.
Yeah, I would imagine.
It's been a minute since I played that system, so I don't remember the intricacies of the weapons and the damage specifically. I'd have to look at
It's
it
just
again.
small d6 pools.
Yeah. I played that, but I don't remember I feel like I can't give specific advice about give a +1 if it's this kind. Like if they do something cool, like I like the idea of like incorporating some sort of mechanical piece in there. Again, like if they're not complaining about it, like don't stress about it too much. They're having fun, obviously, like Graham was saying, but I do like that. There's a little bit of like that Benny, like, a special thing, you get advantage. Like, there's just something kind of cool about rewarding their extra work.
Yeah.
But I think there are ways to make that narrative too. Like, if they come up with a weapon, like, say, like give their character credit for creating that type of weapon or something like that. And then, like, whenever they, maybe around the galaxy, they get like a reputation as an amazing weaponsmith or what.
Yeah.
Like, find ways, like, I have no idea if that would have fit with their character story or whatever, but find ways to incorporate that into the narrative if there's not a mechanical benefit to these weapons that is a little bit of like a boost or a reward or a boon.
Yeah, something distinct, right?
Yeah, like when they're interacting with other people. Oh, you created, that's my favorite weapon, whatever. They meet Jane from Firefly. They're like, oh, that's my favorite one. I clean her every day because it's the best. Like just some sort of little like narrative pat on the back that they're going to like and freak out about a little.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a cool idea.
I could be wrong, but I think, Kimmy, what they're doing is it's the idea that you've made your character and they say, we have a gun. Great. And then outside the table, they've added every deal. It's like I have a longsword, and then you give the longsword a backstory and you draw it in class and you add all this stuff. I don't think it's something about that. I think they're just embellishing parts of their character.
Yeah, but that's also part of the world building. So have it impact the world.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's not, I mean, maybe having their character design it was a bad example, but maybe they meet the person who designed that weapon in the game.
Well,
like, their character.
That, like what I was thinking was like if it's a blaster, it makes different blaster marks. And if anybody's chasing after them, they start like if they're like, running from the law starts figuring out they can track them by the presence of these blaster marks, something like that. If it's not mechanical, absolutely. Or they become notorious or infamous or famous for having that particular kind of build of weapon,
Yeah, I mean, it can become something like, there's tons of like folk heroes and stuff who had specific, like you were talking about the broadsword. It's like, okay, we've reforged the shards of Narsil have been, reforged. It's like whatever it is, like have them famous for that, like have them become, Stormtrooper 5 of the Six Slinger. I don't know. I don't come up with names. This is why I made charts in Starscape, because I don't come up with good names. But whatever it is, it's like just kind of a fun thing that's like a acknowledgement of their excitement about it and their enthusiasm for it, and just like bringing that enthusiasm and that energy related to them back around. Or even if they're creating their own pictures of these weapons, take a look at it and see how that would impact the game world. Does it actually make it harder to sneak it into someplace? Oh yeah.
Does it make it easier to sneak it into someplace?
Mm-hmm.
That could be a lot of fun too.
Penalize them, Jay. That's like the lever.
Well,
Thank you for making this thing. It's making your life harder.
Oh, sure. That's the that's the DM's purview, right?
How dare
the
you
GM's
put this
purview,
extra
right?
thing
It's
into
like,
your
what
character?
complications can I throw your way? No, totally. But if you want something mechanical, I mean, there are a lot. Like every game has a little way that you can benefit. You can create a little benefit for the player. Maybe they get a reroll or something like that. If you don't want to completely change the mechanic or completely add a mechanic, because this thing does XYZ, you've mounted XYZ on this, I'll give you a reroll under these circumstances. That's probably the easiest thing you can add.
Yeah, just something in there. I just like like having been a teenager once upon a time myself, and even now,
humble brag.
I know, I once was at an age. Good for me.
I rode a motorcycle and played folk music as a teen.
I did not as a teen. No, I was so boring as a teen. And people, and like everybody nowadays, like even adults, like we like having even if we're doing it because it brings us joy, it's nice to have it acknowledged.
Mm-hmm.
So just finding some way to like be like, hey, I also appreciate how cool this thing is, so I'm going to pull it into while we're baking or we're making our stone soup. You know, I'm going to pull these elements that you've created separately into the soup, so it becomes part of our, you know, our community flavor, our collaborative flavor, as it were. I think, I don't know, I feel like that's such a cool thing within reason, because I also, having been an age once, like, I'm like, oh, I created
Whoa.
this super tiny thing that also has like the biggest power ever, and I can hide it anywhere. It's like, okay, there has to be like some limits. Like,
My favorite way of acknowledging like little things like that like a character has created is to have a child in the game world be like, "Wow, that was so impressive. Can I be an adventurer like you and have something cool like that?"
yeah,
You know.
will you sign my blaster, sir?
Right. Yeah, there you go. Can you etch your runes onto my broadsword?
Yeah.
Out of my forehead.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a fun little thing. I
am
find
reading
kids in
between the
particular like
lines.
really latch into
Right.
that too.
Yeah.
Like they love that. Yeah.
I'm inferring a little bit about Winded and Winnipeg, but I feel like they're still creating a problem that's not there. It seems to me that, you know, they're in a situation and the PC, their son, says, well, I'm going to blast him with my X480 P9 plus X that I built myself. And they roll and they do 40, you know, damage. And the kid goes, yeah! Like, it seems to me like they're into the game and they're into their characters doing a thing. And whether or not he's engaging with it directly, it seems like the kids are excited about using the thing they made.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a disconnect. And
No.
I think that all of these things are a sign of engaged players and excited players, which is like, it's everything you want. Like you want players to be asking when's the next session and when do we want to be involved and doing all the stuff that you don't ask them to do. Like if they look at their sheet and they say, I'm doing this is real, then again, they're creating the alchemy of RP. It's not just a blaster. It's a thing that they've thought about, and they have this crystalline image in their head about what it is. And for them, it makes it more excited and more real. And whether or not it's the artifice of what's happening and the dad's 40 damage feels like it's not impactful, it seems like it's very impactful to them. And again, I'm reading between the lines, but it seems to me like he's just got a bunch of really excited teens playing a game they love.
Right? Especially as a parent. Like if
Yeah.
your teenagers are this excited about doing something with you,
Yeah.
win. Like total win. Like
Yeah.
it like
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
so excited. That's amazing. This is like we have people write in emails specifically about how do I get my teenagers to play games, or how do I interest my teenagers? My kids seem bored in the game I'm running for them, and yeah, you stumbled
Figure out
upon
the shit
the
they wanna
magic
do.
sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get them the thing that they're keen into, which is photoshopping and drawing and naming stuff. Like
Yeah.
the buy-in. What is their buy-in? If your kid's not into it, figure out what their buy-in would be. Like
Yeah.
that's the key. This dad's done it. He's made it. You know.
By accident, it seems like he
Yeah,
doesn't-
yeah.
He has it and he doesn't know what to do with it. He's like, oh,
Yeah.
someone passed me the hot potato. What do I do? Do I hold it? Do I eat it? What do I do? Do I share it? It's like, yeah,
You're right, right?
Sorry, I'm like on kids game. You said
Hot potato, 40 damage.
yeah. Oh yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. No, I think that's good. I wonder. I'd love like a follow-up email. Like, hey, my kids are now almost 30.
I know, like 10
I
years
know,
later.
yeah.
Winnipeg is back.
Yeah.
Max
You're still listening in those
Supernova,
car
or if
rides.
anybody who knows Max Supernova is still watching and listening,
Yeah.
let's hear the follow up. I would
Kirby
love
from
that.
Winnipeg. Yeah, they're like, well, my kid's 27 now. They're married and they've
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
they have a child and they're starting to buy.
They're-
And they
Large-
can't get their kid involved
Yeah.
in their D&D.
And they're now
game.
modeling,
Yeah.
weapons for video games.
Yeah,
I mean, cool.
and we'll just
I don't
be
know.
like, have James buy them LARP dice, and they'll love it. It'll be great. Yeah, maybe the kids will send in emails. That'd be amazing.
That'd be so cool.
Maybe instead of
Actually,
playing
really
the
cool.
West End game, you can play Starscape, coming soon. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that, Graham. You're never allowed.
Yeah, organic plug.
Yeah, that was super chill. No one noticed. Well done.
I'm the chillest.
The most chill ever. All right. Thank you for joining us for season 34, episode 5 of the Happy Jacks RPG podcast. Please support our amazing indie designer of the month, Graham Gens. Yay, he, they. And you can find his games at grahamgens.itch.io. Thank you to our chat mod, James V, and to our amazing Patreons who keep us ad-free and independent. It's because of you we get to talk about whatever we want instead of having to do stuff that is going to be popular enough to get money for us. You can join their amazing ranks at happyjacks.org/Patreon. Thank you so much. I will catch up on your Patreon stuff now that my Kickstarter has launched and I have slept. Love you all. I really love you all and I appreciate you all. My name is Kimmy.
I'm Jay.
I'm Graham.
And today we're going to leave you with a song called Late to the Party by our friends, the electric band Electrotron. And we will see you next week. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
What's going on down at the end of the street? So many people that look older than me. Looks like a shindig where the dreams flowing free. The neon colors are a marvel to see. I think I heard about this some time ago. My friends have talked about it before I know. It looks like lots of fun, so I'm gonna show. I feel the beat and life is ready to go.